Hello, everybody. It's the Old Bears from the Old Bears Den of Bigfoot. And tonight we got a live, and we've got two very important people. Tonight we have Les Odell, and we have a special guest that is going to be the focus of tonight's live show. I hope you enjoy it. And we are going to get started right now. We're going to bring Les on, and then we'll bring our special guest. Hey, Les, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, Les, we have a special guest with us tonight, and you think he's ready for this?
He's been chomping it a bit now for a week. So, and for the last 2 hours, it's been pretty intense.
I would say so. All right, well, let's bring on the focus of tonight's show. Hi there, buddy.
Hello.
So, tonight we have a very good and seasoned investigator in Mr. Les Odell. And then we have the next generation of investigator tonight, a young man by the name of Mason. And I'm glad to have both of you on here. Since it's a father-son team, that it makes it even better.
Yeah.
All right, Les. I'm going to ask you a real tough question. The sighting that you thought that may have been a Bigfoot creature, have you figured that one out yet?
No, it's still in my brain that I still can't definitively say I saw one or not. But what I still see when I think about it, I can't think it could have been anything else. I mean, I've ruled out person, I've ruled out, a log maybe, or or if it was a bear standing there on this rock. But yeah, to me, I still have that skeptical, always like, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I haven't ruled it out entirely yet.
Well, you're going about it right. You don't just assume that it's a Bigfoot.
Right.
And that's the reason I guess we've kind of connected about it and everything about Bigfoot. But let me ask Mason a good question. Mason, what do you think about your dad having a possible sighting of a Bigfoot?
I think that's 100% positive.
Why do you think that, Mason?
Because I believe in Bigfoot, and I want to be just like my dad.
That's got to make your chest swell up a bunch, don't it, Les?
Oh yeah, absolutely. he's my number one fan. He is my exploring buddy. He's there by me all the time.
So I've got a question for you now, and I don't know if you're going to be able to make it or not. Have you thought anything about coming over to Salt Fork next weekend?
I thought about it. It is my birthday weekend. So my wife kind of said something about being around for, I'm going to be around for one day, but also I have a gentleman in the southern part of West Virginia that's been dying for me to come check out his property and his the activity he's having, and I may go there. I mean, I haven't decided yet, but I really, I really want to come up to Salt Fork, but um, sometimes when people are calling, needing help and needing trying to figure out what's going on, I kind of put that, in the foreground,
Well,
I guess. Yeah.
that's paramount. I mean, if somebody is having, you know, things that could be possibly Bigfoot,
Yeah.
you definitely need to take care of that first. And I understand that. But the question is Mason going with you?
I don't think he'll go there with me,
Mm-hmm.
just mainly because it's just, for the fact is it might, I don't know how safe it'll be. But if I do come up to Salt Fork, he may come up there with me and hang
Okay.
out.
We'd love to have him. And if y'all make it to Salt Fork, Mason, are you going to go out Bigfooting with the old bear?
Of course I will.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I am. It would make my day if y'all get to make it up there and we get to take him out Bigfoot. And I'll teach him how to do howls. Is that okay, Les?
Oh yeah, he does a pretty good one already on his own, but you can be taught some more though.
So, Les, where have you gotten in your investigations? I know you've done quite a few videos on some of them, and have you found footprints or anything like that lately?
Not lately. I have found some prints in the past. I've heard the howl a couple of times. As far as like other things like structures and stuff like that, I'm not really 100% sold on structures and stuff. A lot of stuff I find, I can easily, I guess, rule out, you'd say, or in my mind, I can rule it out, or just, it's just not concrete enough for me to say, yeah, this is Bigfoot. But yeah, I've found a few prints over the past few years. The first one was in 2020. And I found it in Tucker County in an area called Canaan Loop here in West Virginia. It's right outside of Blackwater Falls.
I know where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was in January 2020. It was me and my other son Jax. Jax was about Mason's age, and we had real warm weather that weekend, that week. And I was like, well, I want to, since the weekend is going to be nice. I know we had a storm coming in like Sunday or Monday. But I think it ended up hitting on Sunday. I was like, I want to go up and check out the area. And I went up and we just camped out for a little bit and done the normal stuff, just watching, listening, watching and hiking around. And I found underneath this pine tree an impression. And at first I'm like, yeah, that can't, I'm not sure if that's what that is, And I was talking to a friend of mine, via phone, and he said, man, just cast it. He said, just, when in doubt, cast it out is what we always say. And I did. And it showed up. Yeah, I actually got a 3D printing of it here. I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, it's kind of hard there. As you can see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's a 3D copy of the cast. The cast is actually in the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum now, but I was excited. That was the first one I've ever found, and then I've only found a couple others that are partials, I guess you'd say. There were two partials. It was in the area, probably, how far? I'm gonna say it's probably 25 miles away, 25 to 30 miles away. And then I found one on a property in Fayette County, West Virginia, on a gentleman's property. His name is Billy Humphreys, and some that have watched Finding Bigfoot and the Expedition Bigfoot, I think is what it's called, because I don't really watch the shows that much. They probably know the name, especially when the Finding Bigfoot, when they got them all back together and done that episode. Billy was on there, and was talking about his sighting. Well, I was contacted by a friend that has a magazine, online magazine, and he had me contact Billy, and well, Billy wanted somebody to talk to, and I contacted Billy, and I investigated his property 3 or 4 times and found one print there, but his sighting got a lot of attention. There's a picture out. He took a picture, and it floats around there out there. Some people say, "Oh, I can't see it," but there are a lot of people say, "I can see it." And he
Mhm.
and what happened is him and his wife prior, I forget how long prior, it was like either the summer or the fall before. I can't remember exactly which one it was. She had shot a bear on her property, and well, they decided that they're going to start putting food out again. So they started putting different food out, whether it was, sweet corn feed or
Mhm.
anything they had from the house. They take up and put this on this food pile. And he had a blind nearby, and they started noticing that the food was coming up or coming up missing quick, and a lot of it gone really quick. So he's like, well, there must be another bear. Another bear's coming through. So they kept going up and they put more food out. Well, one day they're setting, well, let me back up. One evening he's up there by himself. He just put some food out and he's sitting and he's blind. And he had he had put a light, a solar powered motion light. He took it and as far as he could reach up behind the blind and stuck it to a tree. And so Billy was like 6'1", somewhere in that neighborhood. And he stuck that light up. So it was probably about 7.5 feet tall, or off the ground, 7.5 to 8 feet tall. And he's sitting in the blind and he started texting his wife. He's like, man, it just feels odd up here. It just feels weird and strange. He said, I just feel uncomfortable. And he started hearing something behind him, and he thought it was maybe a deer or something moving. But it never, even though this happened, it never dawned on him that this could have been Sasquatch related, because he did not believe in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the
Mhm.
subject at all. But the light kicked on. And when the light kicked on, he said, well, it's probably just something, a deer. So he's still in the blind. But again, even though something blocked the light out, he still didn't realize it was something that could have been that big. So he went on and he told his wife, he's like, hey, there's something weird happening up here. He said, I'll be down at the house here shortly. So a handful of days or something like that went by, and they're both in the blind, and they're sitting there just tinkering, or Billy's sitting there tinkering with calls he had mounted on a board in front of his blind. Him and his wife sitting there, and she all of a sudden goes, "Oh my God, there he is!" And he goes, "What, the bear?" And she goes, "No, Bigfoot." And he looks up and he sees this thing. Well, he had the wherewithal to grab his phone. It was an
Mhm.
older flip-like phone. Picked it up and took just like that, right out through the front of the blind, took a picture. And when he did, either this thing heard him move, or he said either heard the can or the phone make a noise or whatever, but it screamed, it roared or whatever. And as it did that, it turned to its left, swung its arms around, and ran through the woods. Just took off running, just screaming and howling. But the way he described it was like gorilla looking, big traps, the head, but it had blonde hair under its eyes. And in the picture, like I said, the picture's kind of grainy, but you can see something there. But the one thing that does stand out is this blonde spots that he's calling the hair under its eyes. So
Right.
I got contacted, and then I went up and I talked to him, and his story never changed. It was always the same. I talked to him 3 times, and each time actually talked to him 3 times in person as I went to his property, and more times um, on the phone, and it always stayed the same. His juice must be getting to him. He must have to in the bathroom,
Mhm.
and hit when I went up. I tried my best to trip him up, see if I could get something to change, and nothing changed. So the third time I was up there, he was off. He went off to do something real quick, and I could tell that his wife had. You could tell that there was something. She had seen something or she had something that she wanted to say, but she didn't want to say it in front of Billy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked her, I said, "Has anything else ever happened around here? It was strange." And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, you mind telling me about it?" And she goes, "Well, I've never told Billy this, and I just didn't, because he doesn't believe in it, or didn't believe in it." And she goes, I'm pretty sure it was the prior summer. She was outside. It was a nice warm day. She said it was a nice breezy day, or it might have been spring, wasn't summer. And she said it was a fairly nice warmish day and breezy. And she decided, I'm going to take the linens out and hang on the clothesline, you know. So she
Mm-hmm.
goes out and she puts them on the clothesline, and then goes back in the house. Well, after some time goes by, she decides that she's going to go take them back down. And as she's at one end of the clothesline, and the clothesline there had two T-poles. I mean, most people in the country knows what the T-poles are for the clothesline,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what they look like. They just look like big T's sticking out of the ground.
Right.
And she's taking the sheets and stuff down, and she looks down at the far T-pole, and and it to her it looked like she said to her it looked like coveralls were hanging on this T-pole, like had it the arms of the coveralls over the pole. And then she realized, well, I didn't wash any coveralls. I didn't hang any coveralls up. And then it moved. This thing moved. Well, it scared her. She drops the basket and starts to run. And this thing did the same thing. But this one that she saw wasn't as big. She said it was lankier than the second one, but it
Mm-hmm.
did the same thing. Took off running in the same direction, screaming and hollering, and just running to be heck down through the woods. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's one of the ones that I've always thought was, to me, most inspiring for me, as far as Bigfoot in West Virginia, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of evidence there. The photograph to me is, even though it's grainy, it's just, to me, substantial. I mean, it really looks, there's something there. And then a couple years later, I get a phone call from a gentleman, and he's like, "Hey, I've seen you're into, you do Bigfoot investigations." And I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I don't really believe in that, really." And he said, "But I had an experience a few days ago when I was taking my children to school." And I was like, "Okay." And he told me where he's located, and he's traveling up the road. And he asked me, he said, "Do you know what kudzu vine is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, I know." And I don't know if anybody else knows. I mean, I'm sure you know what kudzu vine is.
Oh yeah.
It's a vine. It's an invasive plant that just takes over. When it starts growing, it just chokes everything out. It takes over everything.
Yeah.
And usually, about the only way to get rid of it is their landowners will actually bring cattle in to eliminate it. But anyway, along the road, there's a bunch of kudzu vine, and he sees something stick. What and he knew what it was after, but he'd seen something stick its hands out and pull this kudzu vine back and stick its head out. And he sent and he drew. He asked me. I asked if he could sketch it. He sketched it for me in color. He did all with, the green vine, and he the best he
Mm-hmm.
could with the color of this thing. Although it didn't have the same head shape that Billy described, and it was a little more reddish color than what Billy described, but it did have the blonde under its eyes. And I was like, "Do you know who Billy Humphrey is?" And he's like, "No, I have no idea." I was like, "Well, how?" I asked him how close he was to. It's actually a town called Denise, is where Billy had his sighting,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me it's only like 50 miles away. And I was like, "Well, that's pretty cool. That's not that far in terms of some of
No.
these animals that can move." And to me, it gave validity to Billy's story even more. That something just down the road, in the sense just down the road, had the same characteristics in a way, but maybe a little different. Maybe it wasn't the same one. It might be. Maybe it was a family member, I guess, or however you want to say it. But he said it did have, and even in the drawing, he drew the white collar underneath its eyes on the cheeks.
Hmm. Well, I mean, how should I say this? everyone that I've ever seen, their colorations,
Mm.
if it's a family type thing, usually the male is kind of dominant in their bloodline and in the way they're collared, usually. And I've seen some that's solid black, but then they'd have like a little white spot somewhere. Um, and it was kind of predominant on the other males that may have been, were part of that clan, evidently. And it's something that could be hereditary. So you never know.
Yeah,
Now,
I've taken reports of all different colors: reddish color, black,
yeah,
brown, cinnamon, patch. I guess they described it as like kind of patchwork.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a array of colors.
Have you ever got a blonde yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't seeing things in North Carolina.
Yeah, it was actually, there's a sighting, a couple sightings in and around the Randolph County area here in West, outside of Elkins. A lot of people have claimed to see a blonde one. Yes.
Hmm. Well, like I said, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't seeing things when I was down in North Carolina there a few years ago. Now, Mason, let me ask you a question. As a young investigator, are you hoping to see a Bigfoot? Or you want to see a full size one, or you want to see the little ones?
I would say like both. That'd be
Why would you
cool.
want to see both?
But if I saw a baby Bigfoot and a grown one, that would be the most interesting one I've seen.
Now, there's a reason I asked you that, Mason. There is a beautiful lady that's sitting over here beside me listening in. And what was it 2 years ago? Or was it 3? 2 years ago, we were at Salt Fort, and it was on a Friday night, and we were sitting around the campfire, and she looks up and sees 3 little ones playing around near our camper. I was kind of hoping you would say you'd want to see the little ones, because the big ones ain't very pretty. They're as ugly as me.
So would you want to see a big one or a small one, Mason?
Rather small, because they're most playful, and I bet you we were monsters, and they might have played with us.
Well, I've had reports of young kids your age being out in the woods playing around, and then one of these things walk up and they think they're human because they look so human. Just they got hair on them, and well, not as much hair as the big ones, but they have hair on them, and they have a little bit darker skin. But other than that, they played with them.
Yeah, like that would be awesome just to see a little one.
Just remember, the bigger you go, they're a whole lot bigger. And I mean, they're taller than your daddy or me. So
I think they could get up about to 50 feet.
50 feet.
50.
They're huge.
Well, yeah. At your height, they are huge. But yeah, the biggest one I've ever had a report of, I think, was 12 feet. And in Alaska, I got one report of a 16-footer.
16 foot? Wow.
Yeah, 16 foot, Mason. That, just to give you a perspective of what 16 foot is, you know how tall the ceiling is in the living room?
Yeah.
It's 8 feet. So twice that tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. 50 foot's like as tall as like some of the power line poles. So I don't know if you'll find one that big.
Yeah, those would be kind of hard to hide from you.
They could actually, if they could have like leaves by their head, and they can just go like and act like a tree, a tall tree, really tall tree.
Yes, they do that in the woods. They will stand beside a tree and let you walk past them. within mere feet of them, and a lot of people don't see them.
Huh.
And as an investigator, you've got to train your eyes on what to look for. Little things out of place will give you a chance to maybe see one. That's what you got to look for. You got to look for little things out of place.
Mm-hmm. I just want
So-
to answer Bob's question there real quick. He's
Yeah,
8.
go ahead.
Yeah, he's 8. He asked how old Mason was. He's 8.
Well, he's a lot grown up for being 8 years old.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
When I looked in the comments, I saw a comment from Brian Barber saying this. Well, let me find it first.
Which one, Mason?
Brian Barber.
The little Bigfoot would love to come up and check out Mason's mohawk. Plus, Mason seems like a cool, collected kid. That one?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find it. If it's not here, I'll tell you what it says.
Okay.
I'm looking.
All right, Mason. You have to
Find it.
Okay.
Well, it said, "Hi, Mason."
It said hi, Mason.
Yeah,
Okay, they say hi, Mason.
that's what it said. Brian Barber. Hi, Mason. And then
Well,
add a little emoji.
So, how far you take him with you? A lot of times when you go out and look for footprints, and you look, I've seen a video where you were looking in the snow, and he was with you. How often do you have to end up carrying him?
And I've never had to carry him.
It's a good investigator.
He's got his own little backpack. He's got his own little hiking sticks. And now we did have to take you. He was only maybe 4 or 5. He was out with me. We went and we explored a big cave, and then come out of that, and we decided we was going to go to an area where there have been reports. And we hiked back a little ways, and this is during cold weather. There was snow on the ground, and we set up the tent. He's out there having a good old time. He's got his little life straw and stuff that he wanted, and we made hot chocolate, and then it got dark, and then the coyotes went nuts. Remember, Mason?
Yeah, I did not like that.
Yeah,
I was 7, not 5 or 4.
No, you weren't 7. You were like 4 or 5. That was a few years ago.
No, that was 6. I was 6.
No, it's been like 4 or 5. Trust me.
Well, it's still in my memory, so it has to be 6.
You can remember longer than that.
I don't even remember when I was 3.
Well, anyway, he's like, he said, "Dad, do we have to stay?" And I was like, "No." So here we are in the middle of the night, in an area where these things are supposed to be. Not only they're supposed to be, coyotes around, and because I had to shoot off one shot to get the coyotes to go away because he was getting scared. And he's like, "Can we go? Can we go?" And I was like, "Yeah, we'll hike back out, and we'll take the van to the top of the mountain. We'll sleep in the van." And the whole time where we hiked in is just laurel bushes, straight up and down, real tall laurel bushes. And this path is only shoulder wide on me. And the whole time I'm like, "Come on, Mason, go, Mason, go." Because I was like, I want to get him out of there. But we ended up going to clear the top of the mountain. We spent the night up there, and that's where again, there's been other sightings and other noises or other howls and vocalizations up there. So we hung out there, but we didn't catch anything, or we didn't see anything.
Well,
Dad.
It don't always happen. I mean, you don't always get to see them, or you don't always get to hear them. You don't always find evidence. It just depends on what time of the year, where they are, and what they're doing. If there's not making much movement, and
Right.
you ain't gonna find anything. So, Mason, I have another question for you. When your dad goes on investigations and he takes you, is it your job to write down all the evidence that you find, or whenever somebody gives your dad an account, are you the one that writes it all down?
Nope.
What do you do? What do you normally do?
I
Taking pictures and stuff, right?
yeah, I take pictures.
And you do and you record stuff that we find.
Yeah, and one time when I was with him at work,
Mm-hmm.
I was watching Slap Ham. I paused it at certain moments, took a couple screenshots, and I want to print them out, and I want to show them to you. See if you can identify any of them. None of them were Bigfoot. I'm just want to ask.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can have your dad send them to me, and I'll send you a reply on them. Okay. So, how are you at finding tracks, Mason? All the game that's in West Virginia, and identifying it.
I can identify a couple tracks, moose or deer, and some I can actually tell Bigfoot. But if they're a little bit caved in, like the heel, and it's still rounded, I think it's a bear.
Well, that's the best way to categorize a print. If it's something that doesn't scream at you that it is Bigfoot, don't ever accept it as Bigfoot. Only something that proves itself is the best way to go when you do a track. Am I right, Les?
Yeah. Yep. I bought him a pamphlet, I guess you'd say, a little trifold pamphlet that's waterproof and stuff, and he carries it with him in his pack. And if we find something, he can match them up and learn the tracks. He's learned deer really well. He does know raccoon. He does know possums fairly well, and stuff like that. And he knows what canine tracks are. We actually went to a local park here probably, I don't know, it's been a couple years ago, and it's like sand like in this play area, or it used to be. It's not now, but it was sand in this play area, and we were just down there hanging out, and we found canine tracks, and a couple other ones. And actually, there was some kid tracks there. It was kind of odd to me because it was like wintertime. I don't know why some little kids out there barefoot running around this park, but I taught him how to cast. He casted his own little tracks, canine, and those little footprints, and they turned out pretty well. So he's still learning. He's got a long way to go, but he definitely. I think what makes him really set apart from some is he's very inquisitive. He's a very inquisitive young man, always asking questions. He's very he likes to read quite a bit. He gets into reading. He reads more books than I do. I mean, anymore I have a hard time reading books, but he'll devour a book. I mean, it may be something kid-like, but he will devour a book. I mean, sometimes, at least, there's times I've seen him read a couple books a day. And so he does really well with that. And like I said, he's really inquisitive and likes to learn, and he loves the subject. Where'd you go, Mason?
I'm right here.
Okay.
One of the books I really like to read, and it's my favorite.
What's it called, Mason?
It's called Drama Solution: The Hour of Magic, the 8th Adventure in the Kingdom of Fantasy.
Well, now, Mason, it's kind of funny you mentioned that book, because to a lot of people out in the world, a lot of people live in cities and has never been out in the wild. They believe Bigfoot to be a fantasy. You know that, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a map of the Kingdom of Fantasy inside the book.
Mm-hmm.
What he's trying to say, Mason, fantasy is the make believe, and it's cool to have that in your imagination. but you need to make sure you separate fantasy from actual fact and real life. You know, and you do.
I know.
But so Les, is there anything that you came across that is strange, such as, you know, a certain type of Bigfoot that you came across, or certain encounter that someone has had and relayed to you
Oh yeah.
that you would like to share with anybody, with everyone?
Oh yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I'll preface it with this.
Okay.
In my with me, I will listen to anything anybody has to say. You know, I'll listen to every story, every encounter. You know, and you can tell once you do this long enough, you can tell the ones that are, you know, BS, I guess you'd say. You know, you'll get to that point. And I use certain things to actually bring that out in some stories, or for me to pick it up quickly. But I'm not afraid to back down. I'm not afraid to, and I won't back down from a story that somebody wants to tell me that has strange aspects to it. Because for me, one, I've experienced stuff in my life, you know, when I was a kid and stuff that was strange. This that got me into what I do, and I can't take somebody else's story and say no, it's not real. That never happened, you know, because I know what happened to me. So, and not only do I do that, not only because of that, but I also do it because I'm trying to figure out what is going on in some of these circumstances or some of these sightings, and you know, is everything that's being seen Bigfoot? I no, I don't think so. I don't think they are. I think the easiest answer for most and for me, because the other stuff is to this point for most people is hard to explain, you know, or hard to, you know, the strange stuff. So the easiest answer for me is right now, it's a flesh and blood. It's an animal, or you know, even though it may say it does jump from portal to portal, which I don't know if it does. I still think you know, if it's coming from another dimension, which they, you know, I guess scientists are saying now that we have different dimensions of time. You know, even if it does come through, it's still going to be a flesh and blood animal. It's just same. It's just like if you're on this plane and I'm on this plane, and somehow there's a door in between. We're both still flesh and blood. That doesn't make me a spiritual animal. It doesn't make me something else. I'm still myself. And the reason I say that is because there's evidence, there's footprints, there's, you know, there's hair that's been seen, there's sightings and stuff like that, and you know, all these people see, and so when people tell me they have a strange encounter, I'm going to listen. I still listen. And one of the most, and I told this last night on my podcast, and people that were there probably didn't get catch it all because the internet was all messed up. Was a gentleman outside of Oak Hill, West Virginia, in an area, Fayetteville, West Virginia. He was a delivery driver for either for a dairy company or for another company that hauled this milk and stuff for this dairy farm. And he was coming down the road. I believe he was leaving the farm or the dairy plant. And he noticed something comes into the road out in front of him. And this is at nighttime, late at night. And he's driving truck, and the headlights hit it. And so he stops and, you know, slows down, comes to a stop. And as he's staring at it, he's like, you know, this is a big ape. It's like a hairy ape. You know, why? You know, it's in the road. Well, as he's looking at it, you know, in awe, his foot kind of comes off the pedal, the pressure. So it starts to drift forward a little bit in a truck. And when he does that, this thing turns toward him, starts to take a couple steps toward him. And then he tells me, he said, at first, when he sees this thing, it looks like it is going to go to all fours. Like you hear that all the time. These things drop to all fours and will run on all fours. He said, but the damnedest thing is when it did, or as it seemed to do that, he said, then it seemed like it was shrinking. As it shrank, as it came down, and it went from this ape-like creature and it changed into a buck deer. He said a rather large buck deer, and then ran off the road back in which way it was coming from, initially, and went crashing through the woods. And he said, I have no idea what I saw. He said, I have, even to start with, he said, I just can't make sense of it. And I told him, I said, well, there's other stories out, there's strange stories that are told about these things. And, you got one of the, probably the best I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of brings to mind some of the accounts that I've gotten from out west. I've been told that same account from a Native American out in New Mexico, and he said that he was coming home one night, and he said it appeared to be a Bigfoot, and then it changed into something completely different, and he called it a shapeshifter. And I don't know if I can't tell him that he's lying, because I was not there, and I'm not going to tell him that he's lying. I'm like you. You tell me what you saw, and I'll take it however it is. But he told me he was talking about it, and I guess he went to one of his elders, and I'd already came home from. I had to make a delivery in Arizona. I ran into him at a truck stop there in New Mexico, and we was talking, and he was telling me about it, and he called me later, and he said that one of the elders of the tribe told him that he should not talk about it because it will visit him often.
Right.
And he said that the elder told him it was probably a shapeshifter, that they can take the form of anything. Yep. And usually they take the form of something that scares you the most. And then they'll change into something else to get you to where you're able to go on about whatever you were doing.
Right.
But it's a possibility. We don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there with the man, just like you weren't there with that gentleman. So, I mean, that encounter right there would probably scare me a lot.
Right. Me too.
To see something go from one shape to another.
And Brian Barber asked here, do you think it was a Bigfoot or skinwalker? It fits the description of some of the Native American lore of a skinwalker. Or should I say, or let me, I want to say something here. I was actually told this I shared this with a lady that was, partially Native American. And I told her, and I mentioned that, and she said, we don't speak of that name, so I'm not going to say it anymore. But she told me, she goes, I'd rather call them flesh pedestrians. So I guess flesh pedestrian. But it does fit that. It does fit that, I guess you'd say dynamic of one of those, I guess. I'm not sure. I mean, it just was a strange story. And when I told it last night, a fella even asked me, what was the truck driver Native American? No, I don't believe he was. He didn't seem to be, to me, just, I mean, this sounds bad, but he just seemed to be a normal Caucasian male, and, he didn't have any indication or never mentioned that he had any kind of Native American blood. So I don't know if that had anything to do, or would have had anything to do with it, but I don't believe he was.
Well, Brenna's got a question for you. He says, have you ever heard of Bigfoot throwing their voice?
I don't know. I really don't know. I've heard sounds in the woods. I've heard the howls for sure a couple times, and then you hear some of the I guess sounds you say that don't sound quite right. You'll hear the different animal, I guess you would say animal imitations. If that's what they're doing, then that's possible. Then maybe I have, but I can't say I actually watched one do it and whatnot. So.
Well, let me ask Mason this question. Mason, you've been out with your dad at night and stuff. What type of sounds have you heard at night, other than just owls or anything that you would say was a normal sound from night?
Other than nocturnal animals,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard I heard crunching leaves before, like
Okay.
really close to our tent. And then I heard like a short. Well, this was as I dozed off after
Mm-hmm.
he was asleep in a tent one night, and I heard a tiny ow. And Brian, Brian Barber just asked, "Has Mason heard of heard an owl
Heard
howl?"
a howl or a tree knock?
I have heard a howl and a tree knock. Yes, I have, Brian.
Okay. So, um, what? How far do you think you're going to go with this, Les? I mean, how far are you of the mindset to get as much information and put it out there and prove that they're real? Or are you going to be, do you think you'll ever be able to do that in your lifetime?
I don't know if I ever prove it. I don't know. One, I mean, if by some happenstance that I can catch one on camera or something, then that's probably,
Mhm.
which that may not even prove it with the things that we have now with AI and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily looking to prove that they exist, and maybe for myself, not really to anybody else, unless I'm actually trying to help somebody. I'm not looking to prove for any kind of um, for lack of better words, fame or fortune. I really don't. I really don't care if, for that at all. Um, but mainly it's for my own curiosity, the answer to my curiosity. Do they really exist? And now that I've had a, I say possible sighting, I still say possible,
Hmm.
you know, the questions are still there. Do they really exist? Did I really see it? And how do I go about, proving that to myself? And sometimes just proving it to myself, or talking to other folks that have had sightings and encounters, and helping them, or when I help them figure out what they may have saw, it kind of helps me as well. It helps me gather more data to, like I said, fill in the gaps, that I might have. And I've done that even with when I used to do paranormal investigating. I did the same thing, from when I was a kid. I had my experience, and that's what got me started to doing into the paranormal stuff. And I started out curiosity, would read a lot, and got into stuff like that, and listen to stories, and then started helping people that had their experiences. And when they needed answers, I tried to find answers, and also at the same time, we're trying to help, or trying to find answers for myself. So that's, I mean, I don't know if that really answered your question, but yeah, I'm not looking
Yeah,
to
that
prove to
answers.
anybody, not really trying to prove to anybody that anything exists, unless it's somebody. Put it this way, I'm not going out there to the hardest, hardest core skeptic saying, "Hey, this exists, and I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you." I really don't care. I really don't care
Right.
if I do, but I'm really there if somebody needs some help, or answers, or just information, the stuff that I've collected, whether it's encounters, whether it's um, old stories that I've heard, or newspaper articles. And if somebody's like, "Hey, do you have something in this area? Do you have something in this county?" And I'll look through my stuff, and if I do, I'll send it to you. I don't keep stuff to myself. I'll share. I'm not, and that's, to me, that's what we should do. If we're going to see if this thing's out there, and we need to know as much information as we can, to kind of maybe
Hmm.
pinpoint down what they do, where they live, the who's, hows, whens, and wheres of everything. So that's basically, what I do. Like I said, it's not for me to prove that they exist to anybody other than the people that really matter, actually.
Now, you mentioned paranormal.
Yes.
Uh, Before the show started, Mason had said something about that y'all went to a haunted B and B, bed and breakfast, or something like that.
He and I, or
A
Oh,
haunted
that,
be for Mom's birthday. Remember, Dad?
oh, with just me and Mommy?
No.
Okay, which one you talk about?
Up in the attic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we went to. Sorry, I know what you're talking about. A friend of mine owns a house in Sutton, West Virginia, and it's
mhm.
become a well-known paranormal uh, hotspot, and it's called the Haunted Hayman. And
Oh,
it was built in like the 1894 or something like that, and it's got a lot of activity. And I've done a few investigations there and caught some pretty cool evidence, EVPs and stuff like that. But for my wife's birthday, we got the house, and we had family over. Had me, Mason. Quit doing that with your camera, buddy. And me and Mason, or me and all my boys, or wait a minute, who was all there? No,
Rudy,
okay,
Jack, Raylan.
Rudy wasn't there.
I
Mason, turn your camera back on. But it was my wife and I, her brother, his wife, nieces and nephews, my brother, and a friend of mine, and we all hung out there and just had just a cool thing, and see what we could hear and see it when we stayed overnight. We didn't catch anything, but yeah, it was a fun time, and I took the kids. There was Mason, Reese, Raylan. So it was four of them. I took them into one of the upstairs rooms, and I showed them how to do EVP work, and they sat there and asked their questions and listened to the spirit box give answers back, and they just thought it was the coolest thing. And some people are like, "Oh, you probably shouldn't do that with kids," but they need to learn. I mean,
mhm.
we do protect, and I make sure there's protection as well, but they weren't going to be hurt. I mean, I've been into it for a long time, and even when I was a kid, and nothing's really ever happened to me that I would say was really bad, I guess you'd say. Um, but yeah, they enjoyed it, and Mason was the ringleader of the questions and answer session there, so he got to learn how to do that.
Well, it sounds like Mason's well rounded on about everything that he needs to make it in the real world. What I'm saying about that, I'm saying making it out in, when he's working and dealing with all of that, he can definitely deal with people. You shouldn't
Right.
have any trouble whatsoever. So,
Do you hear that, Dad?
Huh?
Do you hear that putter? Yep.
Hold on, I'll be right back. My computer's saying it's dying. Let me see, make sure the cord's plugged in.
okay. So, what did you think of the other night when you were there with your dad and y'all were doing that EVP session and you were asking all those questions? What do you think about that, Mason?
That was cool. But there's one of my cousins the ghosts talk to the most.
Did they actually sit? Did they? What makes you say they talked to him the most? That they did make lights go off, or
Oh,
what
To the
happened?
spirit box.
Through the spirit box. Oh, okay.
they use the spirit box. Once he asks the question,
Mm-hmm.
get answer. It says a few seconds. Immediate.
Hey Mason, what are you chewing on?
Bubblegum.
Take it out of your mouth.
Oh, he's okay. So
Yeah, we had.
it sounds like your
It,
computer hates you tonight, Les.
oh, it's plugged in, but it keeps telling me that it's going dead. But it's plugged in.
Did you make sure the cord is plugged in?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna help you out a little bit, Les. we're going to go ahead and end the show. But first
Okay.
off, I want to ask both of y'all, and I want an answer from both. Is there anything in particular when you deal with Bigfoot that you want to tell someone, or do you want to give your channel? Whatever you want to do.
I mean, you can, if you got something you want to share with me or just talk to me, you can email me at wvcase304@yahoo.com. Then we'll go from there. You know, I can, we'll correspond through there a little bit, or you can find me on Facebook, just Les Odell on Facebook, or WV Cryptids and Strange Encounters on Facebook. And then we'll then we can go back and forth. We can call and talk to each other. Yeah, the Griff fairs that I get my sword out. Yeah, we had to have all new stuff put in today because he was there last night. Yeah, everything had to be replaced today. They had to replace all our boxes and everything. But yeah, you can hit me up on there, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
So Mason, you tell me what you want everybody to know from the time you've been investigating Bigfoot. Is there anything in particular you found out about Bigfoot that you want everybody to know about?
Yeah.
What is it?
Bigfoot, hairy, but brown. And some oak trees, dark oak, those are brown too. So if you're by dark oak trees, keep an eye out.
It's a good piece of information.
It's good common sense. So I want to thank you both for coming tonight, and we're going to end the show. And I hope everybody has had a fun time tonight. I know I have. Watching a father-son team that are probably going to take the Bigfoot world by storm. At least one of them will. I don't know, Les. I know you say you don't want to, but I got a feeling you're going to be in the middle, in the thick of it, more than what you want.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
With that one right there, he may finish it up for all of us. You never know.
Never know. That'd be awesome. He really loves it. And I seen somebody say something about what's his favorite cryptid. What is your favorite cryptid, Mason? Is it Bigfoot, Chupacabra? Is it Mothman?
Oh.
All of them? You gotta have a favorite. Which one is it? Dogman? Huh?
Bigfoot.
Okay.
Well, Mason, the next time I see you, I'll give you a little insight. I'll teach you how to do a certain howl. We might just surprise Dad with his first full-on sighting with it. That'd be all right with you?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Well,
all right. Thank y'all.
I want to thank everybody that came and watched and been patient. I know it's probably not the normal thing to have kids on, but I'm glad you invited us. I know he had, like I said, he's been stoked for it now for days, and he had a watch on today or this evening, and he kept saying, "Is it time yet?" And he'd look at the time, and it's 5:15. Is it time yet? I'm like, nope, a little bit longer. So I want to thank everybody for their support. He really enjoyed it, and I know he does. And Mason, you better say thank you.
Thanks for all the comments, and thanks for inviting me.
It was my pleasure, trust me, and it was every one of the viewers' pleasure. This was about showing a father and son team that is into Bigfoot, and it is out to prove it to themselves more than they are to others, but is willing to help others. Right. And that's what we need. That's what this whole community needs. And I thank you
I
both
think
for
so.
coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I want to
Hey
give a
guys, I'm gonna put you back there, and I'm gonna do the end of the show, and then I'll come back and talk to you in just a little bit. Okay?
okay, but I want to give a shout out to Brad Barber for all the nice comments.
I'll tell him. I'll be talking
Nice,
to him real soon.
nice job, Mason.
Real good. We'll see you in just a few seconds. Okay, guys?
All right, bye.
All right, everybody. That was a father and son team that I have a very strange feeling that they're going to be in the thick of all this, and they're going to be leading the charge for the next 10, 20 years of trying to get this question of Bigfoot solved for everyone. For those that have never seen them, they'll know they're real. And don't be surprised if it ain't Mason that gets the last piece of the puzzle. So I appreciate everybody coming. You all have a blessed night, and may the Lord God bless each and every one of you each and every day of your lives. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.